Let me ask you something no one ever dares to say out loud. What if the reason your life isn't working is you, but not the you everyone sees, the real you, buried beneath habits you don't understand, fears you won't admit, and choices you swear just happened? Carl Jung had a name for this silent saboteur, the shadow, and it's not evil. It's unconscious, which means it runs your life until you finally look it in the eye. Here's the truth most self-help gurus won't tell you. Repeating affirmations and staying positive won't fix what you're afraid to face. And you're not lazy. You're not broken. You're stuck in patterns that were formed before you even knew who you were. But when you understand what shadow work really is, and how your unconscious mind shapes everything from your love life to your procrastination, something clicks. Like a light flicking on in a room you forgot existed. This isn't about motivation, it's about transformation. And it starts by asking one powerful question. Why do I sabotage the very things I say I want? If you've ever felt that, if you've ever stood in your own way and didn't know why, then this is for you. Most people think self-sabotage is just a lack of willpower. I can't stick to a habit, so I must be weak. But Carl Jung saw it from a very different angle, much deeper. Self-sabotage, in his view, is a reflection of the unconscious mind trying to speak. When part of you freezes in front of an opportunity, it might be protecting an old trauma, an invisible fear, or a buried belief. That's not weakness. That's a signal, a shadow signal. Understanding this is like turning on the light in a dark room. You stop stumbling. Picture someone who always ruins their relationships the moment things get serious. They're not evil. They're not naturally insecure. They're loyal to an invisible script. Jung called this the beginning of shadow work, the sacred process of dragging what's unconscious into the light. And weirdly enough, most sabotage is just the mind trying to protect you. If someone learned that love equals pain, the unconscious will create patterns to escape anything that feels like love. Like driving with the parking brake on and never realizing it. Could that be what's happening to you? That's why just changing the behavior isn't enough. The root of self-sabotage lives way deeper, in the basement of your psyche. The real work begins when you stop blaming yourself and start listening. Pay attention to those moments. When you suddenly want to give up on what you want the most, there's always a buried story behind it. Carl Jung Psychology isn't about fixing you, it's about guiding you back to yourself. And things start getting interesting when you finally realize who's been pulling the strings from the dark. Carl Jung once said, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. That shadow is not some evil force lurking in the dark. It's the collection of everything you've rejected about yourself. The envy, the anger, the weakness, the fear, the parts you were told not to show. But here's the kicker. Even if you don't acknowledge them, they're still there, shaping your thoughts, your reactions, and the way you sabotage your own peace. It's like being haunted, not by ghosts, but by the versions of yourself you tried to bury. Think about the last time you overreacted to something small. Maybe a comment that felt like a punch, or a silence that screamed louder than words. That wasn't just the moment, that was your shadow speaking. It gets triggered when reality brushes against a wound you didn't know was still open. That's how the unconscious mind works. It doesn't use logic. It uses symbols, emotion, and repetition. The shadow doesn't want to hurt you. It wants to be seen. That's why ignoring it only makes it louder. And if you've ever said, "I don't know why I did that," chances are, your shadow does. The danger is not in having a shadow. The danger is in pretending it's not there. Jung's individuation process, the journey of becoming your whole self, requires you to meet your shadow face to face. And no, it's not easy. It might show up in your dreams, in your relationships, or in those strange moments when you feel like someone else is steering your life. But here's the twist. Within the shadow is also buried your strength, creativity, and truth. So maybe the version of you that sabotages is the same one that could heal you, but only if you're willing to listen. Self-sabotage doesn't always show up as a dramatic collapse. Sometimes it's subtle. You pull away from someone who genuinely loves you. You delay that project that could change your life. You say, "I'm fine," when your soul is screaming. Why? Because the unconscious mind isn't interested in success. It's obsessed with safety. And what feels safe is what's familiar, even if it hurts. This is why people recreate the same toxic dynamics again and again. It's not a failure of intelligence. It's a cycle that hasn't been made conscious yet. Take relationships, for example. You meet someone kind, patient, and emotionally available, and somehow your attraction fades. Boring, you tell yourself. But what if it's your shadow reacting? If you've associated love with chaos or pain, your unconscious will chase what feels right, even if it's wrong. Same with your dreams. How many times have you self-destructed right before a breakthrough? You start something, gain momentum, and then disappear. That isn't laziness. It's the shadow pulling the strings, terrified of becoming visible. It whispers, if they see the real you, they'll leave. So you sabotage, quietly, elegantly. Jung understood that we can't outrun the shadow, only confront it. Shadow work invites us to notice these patterns not with shame, but with curiosity. Why do you freeze when someone compliments you? Why do you push away good people? Why does peace feel unfamiliar? These aren't random quirks. They are stories written deep in your psyche, often during childhood. Healing means rewriting them, one honest moment at a time. Because what if your sabotage isn't destruction, but a misguided attempt at protection? There's a dangerous myth floating around the self-help world, that if you just think positive, everything will magically align. Smile more, repeat affirmations, visualize success. But Carl Jung would have raised an eyebrow at that. Why? Because painting light over darkness doesn't make the darkness disappear, it just hides it. And what we hide grows stronger. True healing isn't about denial, it's about integration. That's where shadow work comes in. You don't erase the pain, you turn toward it and learn its name. Have you ever told yourself, "I'm happy," while feeling hollow inside? That's not a mindset problem. It's a disconnection from the unconscious mind. If your inner child is wounded, no mantra will fully land. If you're terrified of failure, success will feel like a threat. That's why some people sabotage blessings, not because they're ungrateful, but because deep down they believe they don't deserve them. Positive thinking without shadow integration is like planting flowers on top of a landmine. Sooner or later, something explodes. Carl Jung Psychology doesn't ask you to abandon hope. It asks you to earn it. That means meeting your inner critic, your shame, your rage, not as enemies, but as messengers. Only then can you build affirmations on solid ground. That's when phrases like, "I am enough," start to feel true. Not because you shouted them into existence, but because you cleaned the wounds they were meant to cover. And if this sounds like heavy work, it is. But here's the thing. Behind every shadow you face, there's a part of you waiting to be set free. Most people avoid shadow work not because they don't care, but because they're terrified of what they might find. But here's a secret. You're not looking for monsters. You're looking for forgotten pieces of yourself. Starting this journey doesn't require fancy tools or years of therapy, though therapy helps. What it really takes is presence. Sit with your triggers instead of escaping them. Notice when your heart races, in conversations. Ask yourself, what part of me is being activated right now? That one question can open doors you've been afraid to knock on for years. The unconscious mind doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in patterns, emotions, dreams. That's why journaling, dream analysis, and even paying attention to the symbols that show up in your day can be powerful. You see a mirror cracked in, half in a dream? That's not random. That might be your psyche saying, You've split from a part of yourself. Carl Jung often encouraged tracking synchronicities, those strange, meaningful coincidences that feel like the universe is whispering to you, and maybe it is. The individuation process starts with one decision: to stop running from yourself. Start small. One honest journal entry. One moment of saying, "I'm feeling jealous," and that's okay. Healing the inner child doesn't mean fixing yourself. It means embracing yourself, scars and all. Be gentle. No part of you needs to be exiled. As Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And maybe, just maybe, the more you accept your inner darkness, the more whole you become. So now the question isn't, do you sabotage yourself? It's, are you finally ready to stop? Because awareness is no longer your problem. You know the patterns. You've felt the resistance. You've seen how your own shadow pulls the strings. But here's the beautiful twist. What was once your enemy can now become your greatest ally. Your fear can become fuel. Your doubt, direction. Your pain, purpose. That is the quiet magic of shadow work. Now ask yourself, what's the one thing I've been running from that might actually hold the key to my healing? Which mask am I still wearing? And what's the cost of keeping it on? What would my life look like if I finally made peace with my inner child? If this made you think or feel something stirring inside, then don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and join others on this journey of depth, truth, and transformation. Because the path to wholeness is not meant to be walked alone, and here you don't have to.